Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. In this video we're talking about Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 2, Bluestacks, and more. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off here talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on Android with Skyline, and Skyline's got a couple of brand new updates. If you head to skyline-emu.1 and click on download, you'll see the latest version here is version 1990, at least at the time of filming. This update was part of a series of updates today that implemented a bunch of things. It fixes crashing on some Qualcomm devices when using custom drivers. It implements per-game settings, a feature that we saw introduced in Skyline Edge version 42, which just came out a few days ago. On top of that, there was also some work done to GUI translations. And not to be outdone here, the paid testing early access version of Skyline Edge also got a brand new update. It went from version 42 to 43, it fixes random crashes on launch that occurred on some devices, it adds back picture-in-picture mode, and this is a big one. It doubles performance in LGPE and noticeably improves performance in every single game they tested. Someone's got Doom up and running with some control issues at about 10 frames per second. Someone has Grim Guardian's Demon Purge up and running at a solid 60 frames per second and looking pretty good. Now don't get too excited about this one, but these appear to be Breath of the Wild screenshots at 30 frames per second. Here is Xenoblade Chronicles 2 up and running and looking a lot better than it used to. Now Skyline Edge changes generally make their way into the mainline build after they've been tested, which takes about 2 weeks or less, so keep your eye on the downloads page to see these latest updates. Moving on, and we're still talking about Switch emulation, but switching over to PC and talking about Yuzu. And some early access stuff from Yuzu has made its way over to the mainline build. At the time of filming, version 1354 is the latest update, and it fixes Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that would not boot with the version 1.2.0 game update. And the previous version here, which also released today, adds an asynchronous ASTC texture decoding option. And this option greatly reduces texture conversion stutter with games like Astral Chain, Bayonetta 3, Metroid Prime Remastered, and Fire Emblem Engage, and also Luigi's Mansion 3. And the last bit of Switch emulation we're talking about today is still on PC, but with Ryujinx, and Ryujinx also got a nice small update. Version 1.1.645 just released, at least at the time of filming, and I would argue that this is actually a big update. It adds in support for post-processing effects, it adds in FXAA and SMAA post-processing options. It also adds in bilinear, nearest, and FSR 1.0 upscaling options, all of which can be found in the graphics settings. So here is the latest version of Ryujinx up and running, and here's the settings menu. By default, the post-processing effect is set to none. You can change it from here to FXAA or SMAA low, medium, high, or even ultra. And upscaling by default is set to bilinear, but you can change it to nearest or FSR, and at FSR you can also adjust the intensity. Now if you are wondering which setting is best, my recommendation here is to play around and see what works for you, have some fun and experiment. Next up, we're talking about Android emulation on PC with Bluestacks, and Bluestacks got a couple of updates today. Both Bluestacks 10 or Bluestacks X and Bluestacks 5 received updates. Bluestacks 10 is the cloud-based version of Bluestacks, and Bluestacks 5 is the local-based one. At this point in time, Bluestacks is still only available for Mac and Windows, but it did receive a small update here. They've made some improvements to Valiant Force 2 and Starfall Fantasy Neverland. Two games I don't normally play. Let me know if you play these games in the comments below. Next up, if you've got an RK3588 device and you're running Linux on it, you might be interested to know that Armbian version 23.02 has just released. This one supports Linux kernel version 6.1. Armbian is free, it's open source, you can pick it up in a bunch of different flavors including GNOME or Cinnamon or XFCE, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. Feel free to check it out. And speaking about Linux, next up here, if you're currently using Linux and you like Spotify, you might be glad to know that Spot has been updated the first time in about a year. Spot is an unofficial version of Spotify on Linux. It's free, it's open source, it's available right on FlatHub. And version 0.4.0 just released. If you're interested in this one, I'll drop a link to it in the description below. And last up here, we're talking about PlayStation 2 on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Yes, there's a brand new PS2 Core available for PS4 and PS5. Now this adds to the already existing recently released group of cores that you can play like SNES and Game Boy using the Mast 1 core exploit. which means you need a copy of Okage Shadow King. If you wanted to learn more about this, I'll drop a link in the description below. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.